There's our recording so that our speaker can introduce himself. But before I do that, I do want to recognize Lakeisha McDay, who was supposed to be on the event with us tonight. She has had an emergency, so she would not be able to be here this evening. But again, I do want to recognize her for agreeing to participate and really sharing her time with us. And now I'm going to kick it over to you, Omar, to introduce yourself for the folks.
Good evening. My name is Omar Ahmad. I'm a proud graduate of UNC Asheville, class of 2008. I currently live in Richmond, Virginia, and I work for the Richard Bland College of William and Mary in the athletic department as an assistant athletic director and head sports performance coach.
All right. And so, my first question for you is why did you choose to participate in this event tonight? Obviously, we all have a lot of things to do. And so, I want the folks on the call to really understand why you felt like it was important to be here.
I think number one, as an alumni of UNC Asheville, I think it's important to continue to give back to a place that helped shape and form a lot of the thoughts and opinions and ideas that helped me down the career path that I'm on now. And so anytime I have an opportunity to give back to the university, and in particular in this case, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, I think it's very important that we take this opportunity to enlighten the students, give them some wisdom, and help them to, prepare for their path when they leave campus.
Wonderful. And thank you for that. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So now we are going to jump into the bulk of what we'll be talking about tonight, which is wellness, right? There's a lot going on. Our students are experiencing a lot. We are experiencing a lot as folks who work in higher ed and just in general as we try to navigate everything going on right now. And so my first question for you is, how do you define wellness in your current field, but also how do you define wellness just individually?
Um, this actually kind of goes back to, I guess you can say, my roots at UNC Asheville in the health and wellness major. So I think when you look at wellness in particular, you're talking about emotional wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, um, mental wellness, and all these different areas that can kind of develop this holistic picture of what it actually means to be well. And I think for me in particular, what I feel like is my kind of my vein that I fall within is kind of that area of physical wellness. My career has been in collegiate athletics for the most part, and really on the sports performance training side. And so we talk a lot about just, you know, what that means to be healthy. And to be completely honest, there are some things we ask our student athletes to do that aren't necessarily healthy. So I think it is important that we continue to talk about the holistic picture of what wellness means in that aspect as well. Um, so simply put, I guess the way I had it on that slide, wellness is it's movement, it's nourishment, and it's rest. Um, of course, it gets a little bit deeper than that, but at the end of the day, right, it's about like movement, finding some type of physical activity that you feel is number one sustainable, but then also like you get some type of enjoyment out of it. We're not going to enjoy it all the time, but there's going to be something that kind of drives you to continuing to persist within whatever that physical activity is, and that's going to look different for everyone. Me personally, I really enjoy weightlifting and weight training and resistance training. Other people are going to be into, walking, Zumba classes, yoga, like whatever it is. I think it's got to be something that speaks to you as an individual. But then at the same time, again, like that sustainability piece, like can you do it consistently? And I think that's kind of what that looks like. And when we talk about nourishment, it's got to be, you know, obviously it's what you're putting in your body, right? Um, are you getting enough calories to sustain what the physical activity that you're doing? Are you eating the right types of foods? I really try to get away from like good versus bad. I think there's space for all foods if you do it correctly. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the types of foods that you put in your body, and then also along with that, your energy levels. Do you feel like you're drained at the end of the day? Um, do you feel like you're um, potentially carrying unnecessary weight from maybe eating salty foods or what have you? Paying attention to kind of what your body feels like and how you're experiencing energy levels throughout the day, and nutrition plays a big role in that. And then the other part of it, which also falls into like energy levels clearly, is your rest. And I think that part is highly, highly, highly underutilized in the realm of wellness. Um, and I think what we're starting to see is just the beginning of how important sleep really is when it comes to long-term health effects, when it comes to, memory, when it comes to just overall well-being. And I think that the large majority of college students, even professionals at this point, like we're really not getting nearly enough sleep. I think there have been studies, especially out of like Stanford Sleep Research Center, where you know they've shown that college students and student athletes need upwards of 10 plus hours of sleep. And I can tell you, I can count on one hand the number of times I got anything close to 10 hours of sleep as a college student. You know, so I think again, like really making sure that you're scheduling sleep as a priority versus just kind of something you do because you have to. But it really is that important that we make sure we get adequate amounts of sleep to get through our day.
That's a great point. I tell students all the time, well, I ask them, are you sleeping? Did you have a 7-hour nap in the middle of the day and now you're up
Mm-hmm.
until 6 a.m., but you have an 8 a.m. class? So yeah, I think that's a huge thing that students, especially students who are just coming to college, don't necessarily think about, because you're young, you're excited, you want to do things. Well, coronavirus, so you can't do much, but you don't want to miss anything.
Right.
And so I appreciate you sharing how important it is for our students to really consider, are they resting enough? Are they eating well? Are they feeling well? Because I think it's very easy to lose sight of that when you sort of get into your coursework and if you have a job and all of those other things. Um, so this is very helpful information. So just sort of reflecting on your experience as a student at UNC Asheville, how did you maintain your personal wellness? Or if you didn't, why not? Like, what were some of the things that you can look back on now and wish you had done a little bit differently if you don't feel like you took care of yourself when you were in college?
I think a lot of I think a lot of students go through this, right? But it's the idea that like I want to do it all. Like I want to have a job. I want to be able to be the president of this club. I want to be able to do an internship. I want to, do research. I want to make sure that I'm doing well in all my classes. And, you know, you're getting pulled in so many different directions sometimes that like you really don't take an opportunity to kind of just stop and sit back and think about what's the most important thing and what you're really trying to get out of your experience as a student. And I know for a fact there were times where, I was overextending myself. And I think in this particular landscape we're in right now, especially for students of color, like it's so easy to overextend yourself and be involved in everything that you feel like you should be involved in. And sometimes it's important to pull back and really take some time to recharge your batteries and really think about what's important and what you are passionate about, and what maybe you can let either, you can participate, but maybe not in a leadership role. Or maybe it's something that is not really aligning with where you feel like you're going to go in the future. And so maybe that's something you can reevaluate and kind of drop off your plate. um, I would say that one thing that I wish I did while I was there, um, I felt fairly connected with a lot of the organizations and a lot of the things that I was doing on campus. But I think one area that I probably could have used some help was dealing with the pressures of being great or successful or the best in everything that you do, and then really trying to talk to someone, whether I was in the counseling department, or just kind of, I mean, really with your friend group, about like trying to alleviate some of that pressure and just really trying to kind of work on that mental aspect of wellness, because I think there were times where you just overextend yourself so much, or at least I felt like I was overextended so much looking back on it now, that I really wish I'd have taken that time to really kind of, and it's in my one of my other slides, but like be kind, right? Like give yourself an opportunity to kind of just sit back and, you know, reprioritize what's important in your life. And I did not do that well as a college student.
Neither
Yeah.
did I. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this before we started the event tonight. There's so much more discussion around mental health and sort of a holistic approach to wellness and taking care of yourself. I think it's important, like you said, specifically for students of color, to be able to look at those things with sort of a cultural context.
Yeah.
Because I know, and I can only speak about my own experience, therapy counseling was not something that I knew anything about
Right.
before I started going when I was in graduate school. So imagine, going through K-12, dealing with whatever you're dealing with, the things that kids deal with, going through college as an undergraduate, dealing with all of the things that you're dealing with, and never really having the context of what it meant to get additional care
Yeah.
and how that was a part of wellness, and it wasn't something to feel shame
Right.
about.
I mean, I think, and I'll share with you and anyone else who wants to hear it as well. But you know, I think that is, especially as a Black man, like the idea of mental health and like reaching out for these types of resources, like it's something that, like you said, it's not modeled a lot in our communities. And so even when I was in college, like it wasn't something I ever thought about going to seek out. And looking back now, like I definitely should have. And to speak a little bit more to my experience today, even as a 34-year-old, like I still struggle with that idea of like, okay, do I need to go see someone to kind of help me take care of my mental health? And like, I'll be honest, I haven't done it yet, but I feel like I'm shifting more towards, like really kind of going into that, because it's something that I think is becoming more and more important. It also helps that my wife is in clinical psychology and continues to say, hey, this could be something that could be good for you. So I think that encouragement from the people in your close circle can also be a helpful kind of caveat to you getting some mental health resources that would benefit you.
Absolutely. I love the what am I thinking of? Transparency. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
that. And also, recognizing that for a college student, your support group is everything. So whether that's your friends, whether that's, faculty or staff that you have a connection with, whether that's your coworkers, I think that there's so much value in having that vulnerability in those friend groups and in those support spaces where someone might say, hey, I'm worried about you.
Right.
Maybe we can go to the counseling center together, or maybe we can, do this or that together, because I think that takes a lot of the edge off of seeking out that additional help. And so you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but is there anything else that you wish you would have known as an undergraduate at UNC Asheville? So whether that be knowing about or utilizing different resources on campus or in the community, which I think a lot of our students could benefit from, is, understanding you can create a life for yourself in Asheville and not just on campus.
Right.
How to manage your time, healthy coping mechanisms. What were some of those things?
Yeah. I feel like I had a pretty unique experience because I'm actually from Asheville. So I kind of had that off campus community that I needed when I was really like, struggling with whether it was, social, like trying to build that friend group, or I need to not have cafeteria food. I need some good, home cooking. Like I can just run 15 minutes down the road and I could be home, and I got that. Um, but I think that, and I know it's difficult, and so I don't want to paint this broad brush, but I do think that in the counseling department, if there were maybe more resources, more reaching out on behalf of like issues that particularly affect students of color, could have been helpful, and like really trying to get that particular population of students into Sikh services. And maybe they were, and I just didn't recognize it or realize it at the time, because I do think that, again, like, when you don't see that as a resource, um, you don't really think about that as a resource unless they're actively like recruiting, or not. That's the wrong word. I'm in athletics. I can't help but use recruiting, but um, advertising and trying to appeal to a particular population that may not even realize of the services they have to offer.
Yeah, I think that's not uncommon. Um, I don't think at any university, I think, even in my own experience, that was something that I sort of had to get over. Like, if I was going to seek out, like, once I wrapped my head around counseling in particular as a resource for me, I had to really do some thinking about, like, is it okay for me to see a counselor who may not have the same racial or ethnic identity as me, or, all of those different things. But I
Mm-hmm.
certainly think it helps to be intentional about how you are um, connecting with marginalized students, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So my next question is, what is one strategy or tip you would give to current undergraduate students of color about staying well, considering all that they may be balancing with COVID, with, if they're a new student, adjusting to being on campus or not being on
Right.
campus, sort of the navigating the landscape of dealing with racial injustice in a way that we've seen it recently. um, what are some things, what are some strategies you might share for students to stay well while trying to balance all of these things?
Um, I think, you know, the idea comes to mind of like it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So um, whether you're in your first year of college, or you're in your last year of college, like you still have so much of your life ahead of you, and just trying to navigate all of that alone is it's hard. It's difficult. It's going to be cause you a lot of stress, and then you throw the current climate we're living in on top of that, and it just increases that stress to a level that like none of us have ever really seen before. And we thought quarantine was bad, and then we get the social injustices that we've seen over the last several months, right? And then we're trying to navigate this space where we're trying to maintain social distancing and still connect with people while we enter into this such strange school year that we're in right now. Um, and so I think it's important to uh, be kind to yourselves, right? Like in the sense of when you need a break, or when you need help, or when you need to sit in your room and just kind of like let it all go, then do that, and do it in a way that like you don't feel any type of shame or embarrassment, because that's what you need. um, really find that support group that can help you navigate through these difficult times. But at the end of the day, like, again, like I kind of come back to what we talked about in the beginning of resting, right? Like not feeling like you have to be the one to carry the torch all the time, right? There are other people there that are willing to help you and pick you up when you need to take a break and step back and not be the one out in front. Um, and you have not have to, but you have to learn to be okay with that, and know that like when I need to take time for myself to recharge my batteries, like that's okay. That's okay. The fight will continue while I recharge, and then I come back ready to pick up for someone else who needs a break. And so I think it's just important that take the time you need, and don't feel like you're being selfish. Like that's your time. And when you're willing to go out there and serve and help others, you still have to be willing to serve and help yourself.
Yes, it brings me back to, the quote that folks always say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. I mean, it is a cliche, but it's one of the truest things that I've ever heard, and that I've tried to sort of embed in how I do this work in particular as my professional job, but also, just as a young Black woman who is committed to these things. How am I showing up in a space, right? Am I showing up as my full self, or am I having to pick apart myself to, because I'm not fully charged, because my cup is really riding on E right now.
Yeah.
So I think that is a very, very true statement. And so to shift gears a little bit, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to the alum who might also be on tonight's call. So my first question in that regard is, how have you stayed connected to the university as an alumnus, right? Like, it may not be through the more formal channels, or you may still keep in touch with, your classmates. What has alumni engagement looked like for you, particularly as someone who is originally from the area, but is now many, many hours away?
um I one of the biggest reasons I keep in touch, is through my experience as a student athlete. And so just that connection to the university has been something that, has really just meant a lot to me, as I've even gone through my career. And then I also spent 6 years working at UNC Asheville, so it was very easy to stay connected. And then when you have these experiences, my experience as a student, as an athlete, as a professional, and you think about, or when I think about all of the development and and growth that I experienced through those experiences, I just owe a lot of that to my time at UNC Asheville. And so I think it's important to me to continue to give back, and whether that's, you know the very few resources that I have financially. And when you don't have the money to give, sometimes the best thing you can do is give your time or give your skills. And so I think it's important to think about, what you have to offer, whether that, again, is I have time, I have resources, or I have a skill. But one of those three things that you probably have something you would be willing, or hopefully willing, to give back to the university, and help the students that are there now. Because I mean, I think about, there were a lot of things in my experience that I wish were a little bit different, but at the same time, I think those experiences helped shape my thoughts, and help shape the person I am, and help shape the passions that I have in life now. And so I think, looking back, I think we could all probably find some of those experiences along the way.
I really like um, what you shared about giving back what you can. I think particularly for young alum of any institution, especially young alum of color who've attended a PWI, there is sort of sometimes a contention there about giving back financially, because a lot of times we don't have it. And also, there are things that we may have experienced that we didn't experience pleasantly, right? But I
Mhm.
think it's really helpful to think about it in terms of, what are the great things you got from your university, and how can you give back to the students that are now in your place? I think so often we consider our giving back, especially financially, just being about the university, when we don't necessarily consider the impact of what we can do for students of color, again, that are existing in some of the same exact spaces that we were in
Hmm.
when we were students as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that and giving our alum on the call something different to think about as it relates to giving. Um, and then my last question for you, which I think you touched on in your very first response tonight, is why is it important for you as an alumnus to connect and have relationships with current students?
Yeah, I think it's really kind of mentorship, right? You know, this idea that I can help someone who is currently there, whether it's, you know, talking to them about their experiences and how we have that shared experience, or whether that's, you know, helping them find a career path or get connected with someone in their career. You know, I really think that's something that, you know, is invaluable when you're really talking about, I'm in my junior, senior year of college and I'm trying to figure out what's next. And I can reach out to someone who may have a connection in a field that I'm interested in and kind of, you know, establish that relationship, and they can mentor me as I decide and navigate the career that I want to go into. You know, do I need more education? Do I need to go get a master's degree? Is this something that I can go right into out of undergrad? And, you know, I think anytime that we can come back and try and establish relationships with students that are currently there, and even if I can't help them, like maybe I know someone who can. And so I think it's just important to know where these students are, talk to them, get to know them as best you can. um, and I think that's probably like, and yes, at UNC Asheville, that's where I have a lot of ties, but at the same time, like in my professional experience within collegiate athletics, like I think it's just, you know, that connection with the students in general is probably one of the things that I like most about, you know, working in higher ed and really trying to help them figure out which direction they want to go and explore these different interests, and, you know, seeing how they grow as people in the 4 years, and in this case 2 years that I have them. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I just recently had my first student that I ever hired graduate from UNC Asheville. And so you begin to really understand the impact that you can have in the way that you can really connect with students. And, you know, it's like one of those things, you don't know what you have until they're gone.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, it has made me so much more appreciative of the time that I get to spend every day with students. So I definitely can relate to that as well. So now, I don't know if we have any questions in the chat, but if you have been listening intently all night and you have some questions that you've thought about or you wrote down, feel free to drop those in the chat box, and Elizabeth will ask those of Omar. And if there aren't any questions, Elizabeth, I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right. Well, Omar, you had so many great just words of wisdom for us tonight. A lot of key takeaways, and we did have one question in the Q&A box. What are some mantras or tools that you would use to keep you motivated when it comes to taking care of your whole self?
Oh man, that's a good question. Mantras or tools? Man, that's maybe I need to come up with one.
Yeah.
No, I think when it comes to tools to focus on wellness, I think is don't try to be perfect, right? Like it's this idea that like we're constantly working on ourselves, and so like there are going to be days where you're going to go completely off the deep end, and there are going to be days where you just like nail it perfect. You hit your exercise goals, you hit your nutrition goals, you hit your perfect sleep cycle, and those days are going to be few and far between, and that's okay. You know, like it's okay to not be perfect all the time, you know. And so again, like allow yourself to have some wiggle room, you know. And if you feel like you've made one bad mistake throughout the day, like don't let that snowball into two, three, four, five, right? Like just own that one and then try to make better decisions as your day goes along.
That's great. Thank you. We have another question that's coming through. The Q&A is anonymous, so there might be some anonymity desired on this question. What was your favorite meal to eat at the CAF when you were at UNC
Oh
Asheville?
man.
That might be as hard as a mantra.
Yeah, favorite meal in the cafeteria. Well, so this is going to date me a little bit, but it's okay. I think when we had the Highsmith Union open up and we could get salsarita burritos in there, like that was huge. It was huge. A salsaritas burrito was probably my go-to.
I don't remember those days, but I predate you. I'm so old. So thank you again, Omar. This was great. Before we conclude, we're going to have a final poll that I'll launch. And a friendly reminder, don't forget to tag us up on any of the social media feeds, and hope that you come to some future events of these. Let's see. I am trying to relaunch. Here we go. The final poll, actually, this is the ending poll, so I apologize about that. We'll skip the ending poll, and but we will be doing this again in 1 month, October 1st. Same time, we'll have Dr. Cerise Glenn Maganault talk to us about understanding the isms. Again, I want to, like Megan, thank everyone for coming out tonight. Having alumni, students, faculty, staff all attend these webinars really makes it feel like the UNC family. And I'm really proud of the effort of our alumni volunteers. Omar and Megan, thank you for really being the nuts and the bolts behind making this all happen tonight. In addition to our October 1st session, we'll have several Bonding with the Bulldogs and other alumni virtual events. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say make sure to check out all of our 20 plus events for this year at UNCA, alumni.unca.edu. That concludes my announcement, so I'll turn it back over to you, Megan.
Well, I just want to just do a final thank you to you, Omar. It has been a pleasure having you with us, and you and I being able to have this conversation for folks to, watch and chime in on. And thank you all again if you are tuning in for joining us this evening. And as a reminder, we will be posting this on the OMA YouTube page probably in about a week. So just keep an eye out for that. We will also make a note of that or make an announcement when that's up on our social media. So follow us, okay, at UNCA_OMA on Instagram, and find us on YouTube at UNCA Office of Multicultural Affairs. That's all I got, y'all. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Go Bulldogs.